Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Operation Miss podcast, where we are tackling the maternal health crisis. Today is a very, very exciting episode. We have Dr. Godwin here. Would you like to introduce yourself to the people?
Sure. I'm Dr. Kenyon Godwin. I live in Arlington, Texas. I am a chiropractor and functional medicine practitioner. I have two practices, a lovely wife, and three beautiful daughters. I guess probably the most important part, right?
Yes, it is.
Right. You have a lot of women in your life to protect. It's amazing.
I do. It's a journey.
And Dr. Godwin is a unique practitioner because he serves women who are pregnant, and he is a part of the birthing team. And he has a quick testimonial to share with our audience, just so you can get to know really who he is and what he does.
Right.
I started seeing Dr. Godwin at the recommendation of my doula during my third pregnancy. I was having a lot of difficulty sleeping and just general discomfort and just pain that goes along with pregnancy. When I started getting adjusted by Dr. Godwin, I noticed an immediate improvement in my quality of sleep. I was less tired. I was able to move around easier. Just my level of discomfort significantly decreased all the way through the end of my pregnancy, which was 42 weeks and 1 day. I remember on delivery day just feeling like I could go run 5 miles and it wasn't going to be an issue. The delivery itself was significantly different from my first two deliveries. My first two children, my labors were over 24 hours each. My last child, my labor start to finish was only 4 hours. So my experience with chiropractic care was so life-changing that we started to see Dr. Godwin as a family. And my oldest daughter, she had an issue when she was a baby with one of her legs. When she would crawl, her leg would turn in. And at the time, we didn't think much of it. As she got older, we thought she'd outgrown it because it wasn't visible. You couldn't see that there was a misalignment in her legs anymore. But she did always complain of just pain and soreness in her leg. And I will never forget the day she had her first adjustment with Dr. Godwin. As soon as she laid on the table, he was able to see that there was a misalignment in her legs. And my husband and I were just blown away because it wasn't something that we had mentioned to him before about her having an issue with her leg. It was just something that he was able to see. And after 2 adjustments, she has not complained anymore about any soreness or tightness or pain. And, she's very athletic. She's 8 years old now. And, that was something that she'd had since she was a baby. And she doesn't deal with it anymore. He's also been able to help our son, who deals with he was diagnosed with a seizure disorder from the time he was 3 years old. He's always been on medication for it. And after a few years on the medication, we noticed that the medication just wasn't working for his seizures anymore. And we knew that the doctor was probably going to want to increase his medication, which made us a little uncomfortable because, he's still so young. After him being adjusted by Dr. Godwin, we noticed that the severity and the frequency of his seizures significantly declined. So much so that an increase in the medication at his next follow-up with his neurologist was completely unnecessary. He's been able to focus better. He used to complain of earaches from the time he was a toddler. He had just constant earaches and ear infections. Notice that anymore. He doesn't complain that his ear hurts. He hasn't had any ear infections since he's been getting adjusted by Dr. Godwin. And that in itself was huge for us because this is something that, we've dealt with him since he was a baby as well. And Dr. Godwin has also been adjusting our youngest child since she was.
I know it's kind of long. So I just
don't apologize. Let this finish. This is amazing.
I've noticed from having 2 other children who, were not being regularly adjusted from the time that they were born, that her development is just significantly different from that of our other two children. She's not a cranky baby. She is now almost 5 months old, and she is sleeping through the night a good 6 to 7 hours without waking up. Breastfeeding has been just such a breeze this time. No difficulty, with her staying latched, or, making sure that she's feeding enough. And just, we haven't had, issues with colic. And even, now that she's teething, she's still, sleeping through the night and hasn't been, real cranky or anything. So that's been huge for us. We noticed, just in general, like as a family, chiropractic care has really helped us.
Wow. There is so much in that. There is so much in that. This is just one testimonial and you've been practicing for a long time. And there is so much in there that, and I know, Jessica, we gotta get to these questions, but I'm like, that sleep quality is huge. It's so tied to good outcomes that anything that can be done to improve sleep quality, from how you adjusted her so she was in less pain, could sleep more through the night, to her being able to move more, because we know how important moving during pregnancy is. It's the people that we see that are not moving that run into complications faster and earlier in their pregnancy. And you think about the relationship, right, between moving and insulin being able to pick up extra glucose, right? And so if we're able to keep them moving, can we not regulate their blood sugars even better, right?
That's
and so
true,
then
right?
they're not running into gestational diabetes. And then even afterwards with her child sleeping, postpartum, we need rest. And so, right? So you've helped everywhere along the way. And then if she were to have another child, how much better off would she be if you were in the beginning, if you were there at the beginning? So I think that that's the perfect testimonial. I do have a question. What is the relationship, and this is, I guess, not necessarily directly connected with the maternal health crisis, but the seizure disorders. How were your adjustments helping with that?
So interestingly enough, I've had some experience with helping people with seizures. Someone very close to me was suffering with seizures when I was in school. And so I just took an interest, when something's close to you, you dig deeper. And so I had to go beyond what I was taught in school and just go to different neurological, chiropractic has a diplomate for neurology.
Okay.
Is one of the diplomates offered. And so I didn't get the diplomate, but I took a lot of the classes and I went to these specialists, these doctors. And, as a student, everything is cheaper when you go to seminars, right? And I
Right.
was just drilling them like, hey, this is what's going on, help me figure it out. And smart enough, they would give me some information, give me some references. And really, I just started focusing on, most of the upper cervical spine, and just see amazing results with that. So whether someone comes to me with seizures or migraines, vertigo, neurological stuff, I put a lot of emphasis up there with evaluation and my corrective procedures. And man, one of the premise I love about chiropractic, our premise is the power that made the body heals the body. So I don't ever take credit for healing anyone or any of that nature. My job is to simply remove the interference and allow your body to perform at its best.
Oh, I love that, because we have some moms who, in Georgia, and I don't know how it is in Texas, if you have a seizure, you can't drive for 6 months. So can you imagine the stress that a mom would have if she can't take her baby to and from daycare, or she can't get to and from work because she can't drive, and not realizing that a chiropractor could help with that, right? I just learn so much every time I talk to you, and it helps us know how we can refer better. Because up until what you just said, I would have thought I would refer to a chiropractor in this situation. If someone has, it could be that they have or told they have a narrow pelvis, or, just with what naturally happens during pregnancy, their ligaments are lax, their muscles aren't in the right place. There are things that in my head as a physical therapist, I would say a chiropractor could help with this, right? They're having low back pain as their pregnancy progresses. But there are things that I feel like now we don't even know that we could be referring to you about. So hopefully we'll get more into that as we talk.
That's perfect. So let's talk more about your role as a chiropractor in helping those women who are pregnant. But let's also talk about your role as a husband, because you said that you're a husband and a father of 3 beautiful daughters. So let's talk about both sides of that. Like, what's your role as a chiropractor? Then what's your role as a husband in this whole like spectrum of a woman who is pregnant and postpartum?
Yeah, and if you could dive into specific examples of, because you've had 3,
Yes.
so just maybe some of the birth experiences and how you've had to use what you know to advocate for your wife and for the health of your babies. I just think if you could tie all of that in, that would be great. Take all the time you need.
Great. Yeah, well, I'll do that. I'm freestyling it. This is all put together at one time, so it's just going to come out. So I'll put it together. So we have 3 daughters, and my oldest is 21, my middle daughter is 15, and my youngest daughter is 8. And so 3 different experiences, 3 different births, honestly. So I was only a doctor during my last daughter's birth, right? So I've been a doctor for 11 years. Well, my 15-year-old and my 21-year-old, they were both born while we were in the military. So totally different experiences than our youngest daughter. So I was already here, already a doctor practicing, and so it was just different. But it was that experience with her that made me want to do what I'm doing now.
Wow.
Okay, so I'll tie it in the best way I can. So when it comes to me helping pregnant women, I call it the 4 Ps. Okay. So we have power, we have passage, we have passenger, and we have postpartum.
Okay.
So look at the first P. The first P is power. And as physical therapists, you guys got this down, right? So this is, in order to have a baby and have a really good delivery, we need those uterine forces to be able to create that power so the baby can come out, right? Then those contractions need to be strong, right? What most people don't think about is a lot of the integral muscles and things that help create, and lead to that pelvic floor and help generate that uterine forces. They're stimulated by nerves, right? They're innervated by nerves. And that pelvic area ties into the lower back, into the spine. So therefore, keeping the spine properly aligned, making it simple, keeps the power distributed properly, and now the forces can be generated. Okay, so that's my P. Now the second one is really, really important, and that's the passage. Okay, so you have a spine behind you. And so with your spine, if you have a pelvis on it, what you'll see is it looks a certain way, right? And during pregnancy, the baby's head fits down inside of that pelvic inlet, right? And matter of fact, yes, during birth, the baby's head is head down and facing towards the back, which we call the sacrum. Most people in layman terms call it a tailbone, right?
Right.
So that pelvis, that passage is very important. And so when you look at someone's pelvis over time in life, whether it be sitting, when we have jobs where we're sitting for a long time, which is pretty much being the norm now, you add in some accidents, some car accidents, some falls, you add in some sports injuries, just wear and tear from playing sports, it can change the pelvis. These changes are so small that they're not noticeable to us. But then when you put a baby inside of a woman, and as her abdomen grows, it shifts her center of gravity, it changes her whole posture, and now it puts more stress on a structure that could have been weakened from those things that I just mentioned.
Absolutely.
And when the pelvis starts to rotate and compensate, then this is what happens to it. It does this. And so if one rocks forward and one rocks backward, we now decrease the aperture, we decrease the passage.
Yes. Yes.
So when I do my adjustments for the prenatal, I focus on the pelvic area specifically, because if I can get that properly aligned, I now have or they now have a better environment. Their passage is proper, decreases the odds of dystocia or any birth issues that somebody getting stuck in a canal or, needing intervention, really.
Right,
And
right.
then that third P was the passenger. And so by me working on, so with prenatal chiropractic, if you're going to see a chiropractor that's prenatal certified, that's the question you need to ask. Not just, are you a chiropractor that you want to work on someone who's pregnant? Because I got this just the other day. We had a lady that came in here on, what's today, Wednesday. She had a chiropractor already that she's been going to, but she was hurting worse. And so I started asking her questions like, so did they have this pillow for you to lay on? She said no. And I'm like, no one should ever have you lay on your stomach without a pregnancy pillow. And that's something
Right.
that we use in our profession. And so right away, I knew that their chiropractor wasn't prenatal certified. And what
Wow.
happens is, and it's not a knock, but it's like people try to apply their technique and modify it how they think it should go for someone.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like if you were used to, or let's say you got adopted by a Caucasian family,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they try to do your hair the same way they did their daughter's hair, right?
Right.
Like, I know
Disaster.
how to do hair, so it should work the same way, right?
Right.
But it doesn't work like that.
Mm-mm.
And that's how it is with our profession too. It's like, yes, you're trained as a great chiropractor, but if you're not certified on the nuances of dealing with someone who's pregnant, you're more likely to cause more harm than good.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
Wow.
with that, I focus on the round ligament. That's one of the protocols I do with this. So by keeping that round ligament, loose and less tense, that keeps the baby in the proper position. So we are 16 for 18 in our office.
Look at you.
Over these years, we've had 18 women come in with breech babies.
Uh-huh.
16 out of 18 have corrected themselves, right?
That's
Wow.
Protocol is a big deal, and following
Yes.
appropriately and working on that round ligament, because we want to ensure that the passenger it has everything that it needs or they need, because I deal with women who have twins too, that they need to exit appropriately and be in the right position. And then of course the postpartum part, like Monica alluded to, is very important, because what I tell women is oftentimes, I say 90% of the time, someone who's pregnant comes to me with lower back and pelvic pain or hip
Mm-hmm.
pain.
Mm-hmm.
After they have the baby, though, that pain typically shifts to their mid and upper back. They're
Okay.
looking down, they're feeding, you know,
Absolutely.
all those awkward things, picking up on these heavy car seats. And so all of that then starts to concentrate the dysfunction into that middle part of their back, like around the broad strap and a little bit above. And so
Mm-hmm.
postpartum wise, I'm giving them relief and helping that do better. And I actually show them, even though I'm a man, I show them some better ways to feed, to breastfeed, and to carry that car seat in a
Yes.
way that's more ergonomically correct for them, so that they have more comfort. Because the more comfortable they are, the better that connection is going to be with the baby, the better the feeding
Yes.
experience. We know how important breastfeeding is for the connection, for the intimacy, for the development.
Yes.
And we don't want either of them suffering because of pain or relief. And it's hard enough having your sleep schedule interrupted with a baby, but to not be able to sleep because your back is hurting as well. And then by the time you get a chance to fall asleep, the baby then woke up again. It's not going to be good for anybody in the house. And so
Right.
those are the ways that I contribute from a prenatal standpoint. Now, with my girls, a lot of folks don't realize the military is a very different environment.
Mhm.
So you don't have the choices like what you have. At least you didn't back then. You can't say, "Hey, I want a water birth. I want a doula. I want to." It's still very militant. Like, hey, the doctors are what's called the officers.
Mm.
And so it's like they're still in charge and they still do what they want to do. And I give you an example with our oldest. I was there for all the births, so I'll never forget anything.
Yeah.
And that's another thing before I get to that story. I feel like as a husband, it is super, super important to be involved and engaged for a couple of different
Yes.
reasons. Number one, I wanted to be the type of dad and husband that I was aware, and my kids at any time can ask me, "Did you do this? Were you there for that?" And I could say yes,
Right.
because as a parent, I am half of the contributor towards this child,
Right.
right? And so I'm responsible, and I want to make sure that I'm aware and I know whether something's going wrong or not. Because going to these birth classes, I was sitting there taking notes and I'm listening, because I'm the
Yes.
one, if she starts having contractions or pain or trying to figure something out, I'm like, "Hey, no, actually, this is what they said. We should do this. We should do that." I want to be prepared because I wanted to have my equal share in caring for my kids.
Yes.
And just personally for me, it was a big deal because I grew up without a relationship with my father. I was raised single parent household. And so my thing was always, I want to do something far above what I experienced. I want to be the type of dad that I wanted to have, right?
Yes. Yes.
So even with the pregnancy, it started like that. So with our first daughter, it was not ideal at all. I mean, we were young. And so thinking about those classes, here's how that played out. So my wife, we went home, I never forget, we went home for lunch. We were at Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi. So down in Biloxi, right? Yeah. And it was lunch break and it was her due date. So it was lunch break. We left the base and we stopped at a McDonald's back then. And I don't eat McDonald's now, but we stopped at McDonald's. And
Okay, if you
I love
do.
how you clarify. Now you know better. But
yeah, we stopped at McDonald's to get lunch and we were just going to go back on base. But we lived about 8 minutes away. And I'll never forget, she walked in there and she was like, man, I don't feel good. I think I got to go to the bathroom. So I was like, I was just about to order my food, but I was like, okay, let me take you home so you can go to the bathroom. I'll pick up lunch for us while you're using the bathroom, come back and pick you up, and then we'll get back to work. Because, military is very big on time. You got to be on time.
Right.
So I take her home, and it just so happens to be that her grandmother was visiting from Mobile. So she was at the apartment that we lived in. And I said, hey, I'm going to go to Popeyes because it's about 3 minutes this way. I'm going to go get this food. We'll come back, and then we'll eat and go. So I come back from Popeyes. It took longer than expected. So now I'm rushing. It's been 20 minutes, right?
Okay.
Now I'm rushing. I get back and I'm like, where's she at? And her grandma's like, she's still in the bathroom. And I'm like, girl, what'd you eat? Like, hold on. So I go and knock on the door and she's like, yes. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she was like, it's not coming out. And I was like, you haven't gone to the bathroom yet? And she's like, no, I don't know what's wrong. And I said, all right, you got to get up. And she was like, why? I was like, well, one, we got to get back to work. Two, I was like, but two, I think you're having a baby. And she said, no, I'm not having a baby. So now she thought mad and disgruntled, right? And I told her, I said, listen, during one of the classes, I remember them saying it can feel like you have to go to the bathroom.
Wow.
Right? So this is where they came in handy.
Yes.
And I said, I remember that. It just stood out to me during that time. But now I knew why. So she was stubborn. She did not want to get up. So I actually had to get her grandmother and we had to fuss at her. I had to bring in grandma and get her up off the toilet. And I hauled tail to the base. And within 3 hours, our daughter was born.
Wow.
Right? But
and with first baby,
first one, yeah.
3 hours. That's
yeah. So we left the house probably around 1. She was born at 4:45 in the afternoon. So got there, and again, I didn't have military. I told the doctor I wanted to cut the cord, all that. She did it. She didn't let me do it. Just kind of looked at me like, "Yep, it's done." So whole different story. Second daughter was also born in the hospital. This time we were living in Alaska, so it was a different experience.
Wow.
And with that, they went to give my wife epidural. The doctor missed. It was just a bad ordeal. And then finally, she just said, forget it, and just went on and pushed and had her. But when she came out, it was weird. We could tell that she looked a little like blue or something. It was like different. And they just took her. And like 10 minutes later, brought her back. Like we just sitting there like, where's the baby? We didn't get a chance to see her, hold her, nothing. Just brought her back. And so it was just a different experience. So once I got into chiropractic school, we watched The Business of Being Born, the Ricky Lake birth special.
Okay.
And I learned a lot. And even though I don't like, I'm not the type that I'm going to watch a whole bunch of people have babies, right? I didn't pass out from mine, but I might pass out watching somebody else. It's weird. But I watched that and I learned that. And I thought about like, how interesting is it that this whole cascade happens, and a lot of it is just about convenience, and that women are having these terrible birth experiences, all for the convenience of doctors and hospitals and the medical industry.
Yes.
And it really is a cascade. I mean, you can predict it, from the time you get there, fetal monitor, red flag, and then all these other red flags that just lead to you being induced. And then when that doesn't work out, we know what's coming next. We're gonna have to get the baby out because now the baby's heart rate is dropping. We can't find it, and you're in stress. Baby's in stress. It's like a script.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And so I watched that and I was like, this is crazy. You know, as a guy, I'm like, this is crazy. And
Right.
we, in all fairness, we were not planning on having another baby, right? So we actually did get pregnant as I was finishing up school, but we had a miscarriage. We lost that baby. And so we just thought we were done. And then just God blessed us with our youngest daughter, Eliana, you know,
Mm.
about a year later. So, but now I'm educated, right?
Yes.
Now I'm a doctor and now I understand things differently. And so I'm like, we're going to do this different. We're going to get a
Yes.
doula. We're going to have a water birth. We're going to
Yes.
do all this stuff, right?
Yes.
I put together the birth plan. So as a husband and a doctor, I took control of that. I didn't leave that
Yes.
to my wife, right?
Wow.
Obviously, I sat down with her and we talked about it together. I didn't just dictate, but I put together the birth plan. We interviewed doulas. We did all that together. I was always there. Even as a practicing provider, if she had an appointment, we scheduled it as close as we could to a time that I could have a break. But if not, I closed my office to make it to her appointments. You know,
Yes.
I was there. Everyone, everyone, all the way up to the last one. And so it's important to have that support and for your wife to know that you're there and you're in it with her. You know, you're not
Yes.
just like, hey, I did my part and you're here, because your part is going to extend until you die. I mean, you're always going to be a parent. You're always going to have
Amen.
responsibilities. And so there's nothing that I haven't done. I've changed diapers plenty. When she would wake up in the middle of the night to feed, it was my job to change the diapers. You know, so I would change them and then give them to her and let her feed, and then either put her back or she just laid there in the middle between the two of us. But I was on watch. I made sure nobody rolled on her or anything like that. So I've done hair. I mean, you name it. I've done it all, right? Because
Yes.
again, I want to be an active part of this, and I don't want to. I want to break that stereotype that it's only, you know, mom or the woman that does this. You know, my wife
Right.
works too, so it's not like I could just say, hey, she just stays at home, so you know she got to do it all. It's like, no, we're gonna do this together.
Yeah.
And so with our last daughter, we had that experience, and it was amazing. I'll tell you really quick about her birth. Uh, I,
Yes.
I try to not be biased, but it's definitely one of my favorite birth encounters as a doctor and then maybe as a father, right? So with her, she so all three of our kids in my mind would have been born on their due date. She was the only one that came 4 days early. Now I believe that the reason she came early is because we were rear-ended that the night before. So
Wow.
we were leaving her last OB appointment, driving to get on the interstate, and this truck hits us from behind. All right, so it took all I could not to go to jail that day, and thank God I didn't, because I was about to put
Right.
him through like the ground. It was going to be like a Incredible Hulk situation. Because I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You know, like
Right.
it's a red light. We've been here for a minute. It's not like we
Mm.
just stopped. You know.
Right.
And so anyway, so got her calm. We went and had her checked right away, but she was okay. But by the time we got home, she started having some cramping and feeling a little weird. So she just went to bed. Woke up at about 1 a.m. and was like, hey, you think it's a big deal? I went to the bathroom, but I think I had some extra mucus or something. And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and go ahead and get this ready. She was like, but I don't feel anything. I think we're fine. I'm like, yeah, you said that before. I got this. But again, if I'd been someone that wasn't involved or engaged, right, then I would have just sat at home and be like, all right, I don't know any better, and I just roll over and go back to sleep.
Well, not even that, Dr. Godwin, she wouldn't have told you. Do you
Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
yeah,
It goes even beyond that. She felt close enough to you and that you cared enough that she said, this is different. Another woman would look in the toilet and like, oh, okay, and went back to bed.
yeah,
And so I feel like you have to create that as a husband. I want to know. I want to be involved. I want to be engaged. And you don't just say it. You showed her along the way, you are more important than our business. You are more important than our finances. This baby is more important to me than my clients and my customers. You created that environment. So kudos to you, because I'm telling you, we have moms who, they'll call us before they talk to their person, or they don't, or their person's not there. And so then they feel alone. And when you feel alone, you know what that does to your hormones in terms of stress and how much harder it is to deliver, go into labor, recover postpartum. You created that safe space for your wife where she could say, this is different. And then trust in your judgment because you have enough knowledge to help her. So it's like you said, you had to override her. As a husband, you can't do that if you don't have the knowledge, because then you're gonna get a wife like me that's like, no, you don't, I know my body better than you do,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
But you had to check her, you know,
Yeah.
you knew the first time and you knew this time. So good for
Yeah.
you.
And so we got to the hospital, and within 2 hours, our third daughter was born. And it was beautiful. It was just the doula and I in the room, so she's just in the water pool chilling. And so I was able to catch her, as she was coming out, just put my hand under and caught her. I can't tell you, man, babies are super slippery in the water. So it's a good thing I was an all district receiver in my day in high school. Cause man, I thought I was gonna drop her. It came out so fast and so slippery. I almost fell in the pool trying to catch her, but I secured the catch. I was like, dang, well, this was harder than I thought it was gonna be. So caught her. And during that process, again, this was the only baby that my wife was getting adjusted the entire time.
Yes.
And so what was very different for her is she didn't have any pain. She had her first painful contraction 30 minutes prior to delivery. That was it.
Wow.
And it wasn't like the others. Like, only reason I knew, because the whole time she was laughing and talking, and I was just laying on the couch. It was early in the morning. And our other daughter, who's now 15, she was actually in the next room. She was there too. She was asleep. But my wife got quiet. And so I was like, I just sat up and was like, you okay? And she was like, that was just a little intense. That was the extent of her painful, contraction. Right.
Wow.
And then, so when she had the baby, she just kept saying, I can't believe I just had a baby. I can't believe I just had a baby. Like, that's what she just was vocalizing. Right. And so it was in that moment when I thought to myself, like, this is how every woman should feel. Like, because she was like, man, this was so easy. I could do this again. And I'm saying to myself, let's calm down. Okay. I'm excited. I'm excited that you feel that way. I am. But let's calm down. And so two things happened. In that moment, the first thing I thought was, I need to figure out how I can help more women have this experience to where the birth was so pleasurable and easy that it's not a horror story that they're recounting to their child their entire life. It's not something that I don't want to do this again because it almost killed me or it was so difficult. Right. So I was like, I got to help more women feel like this. And the second thing that happened is I scheduled my vasectomy appointment as soon as the office opened that morning, because she was born about 6:36, so I had to wait till like 8 to call. But so those are the two things that happened in that moment. Real story. And I gave her first adjustment. That was the first and only child I've ever adjusted so quick. Within 7 minutes of being born, I was skin to skin, right? So had no shirt on, and as they were getting my wife out the pool, so I had her, and she was just like all moving around, all crazy, on my chest. And I never forget. This is my favorite adjustment ever. And I just started palpating her neck. And I found, a misalignment in the top of her neck on the right side. It's like old school typewriters. So they used to type and they go to the side and then come back. So it just felt like something just went to the side of the right of her neck. And I just use a little bit of pressure when my adjustments for babies. And when I did that, there's no sound, no noise or anything. That's just air anyway. And babies are not bones, so they don't have any joint capsules yet. So it just slid back in place so easily. And she immediately stopped moving her head around and just rested on my chest. Right. And I was done then. I was like, all right, that's it. And so, that was the difference of that birth versus the others. All natural, no epidural, she's all organic baby. She's not vaccinated. We're just all holistic with her. But yet she's healthy. She's very, very intelligent. Hardly ever have any cold or flu symptoms. I can tell you she's 8. She's probably had 2 colds in her entire life.
Wow.
That's it. And that's about all she's had,
Wow.
So it was just an amazing experience. Anyway, hope that answers your question.
It answers our questions and it opens the door for other questions. I just want to highlight, so when you were in the hospital was this like immediately after the birth, she said we could do this again?
Yes.
Like,
No, like she had the baby. It was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just had a baby. She was like, this was so easy. I could do this 1,000 times or something like that. I don't know what the number was. I just knew it was like, well, we ain't doing this no more,
3 is the number of completion,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I love that because so many women and women, we know, like I know personally, after their first birth, because it was traumatic or it did not align with their birth plan or
Yeah.
it wasn't what they experienced, they say the opposite. Like, I don't think I could ever do this again. And I don't want any woman to feel that way. And I love that you practice with the thought in mind that you want every woman to have an experience like your wife's third experience, because
Right.
that's what they all deserve. And it breaks
Yeah.
my heart when people have a traumatic experience and then that kind of like overshadows them and then they don't want to have another baby just because of what they went through. So I'm so glad that your wife on the third time she got to experience something totally different.
Yeah, me too.
Even though you wouldn't let her experience it
Hey,
again, but
we good. We good. We good.
at
No,
least
it's
you have that
important.
one.
Yeah. And then don't you get a sense of, I don't know, even with the adjustment that you were able to do, the skin to skin, people downplay the importance of the father getting skin to skin. We know the importance of the mom having it. We know the importance of her breastfeeding, but the importance of the father having that skin to skin is very much downplayed.
It is, and I feel like, again, those were things that I didn't know until I became a doctor and I started diving more into prenatal care. We're introduced to it, but I did some extra work and certification in it. And really, when you think about it, just keeping it simple, what I explain to people is we have in America made birth a medical procedure
Yes.
when it was never a medical procedure. It is, to me, the number one phenomenon on earth.
Yes.
Like, there is nothing more phenomenal and ingenious than childbirth. The thought that,
No.
two people come together, have a little bit of fun, and all of a sudden you got a whole human being that starts off as 2 cells and ends up as over 30 trillion cells in 9 months with a personality and character and the same ability to reproduce. I mean, it's just amazing, right?
Yes.
And so when you look at it from a nature or natural standpoint, we came into this world naked, right?
Mm-hmm.
That baby on the inside is used to heartbeats and different sounds and textures, right? It rubs its own skin, right? And
Yeah.
so to come out and then put all these barriers in place up front, it's hard for that baby. I mean, it's shocking enough. We can't imagine, but it's shocking enough to go from out of the dark into all this light and all these different noises and things like that. And so
Yes.
that skin to skin is important because I feel like your first connection with the baby should be skin to skin. So it's like, I'm home. This is familiar.
Yes.
This is soothing. This is comfortable. Mom
Yes.
and dad,
Yes.
help that baby adapt to this world because it's already enough that they're going to have to adapt to as they get older.
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay. I had a question about, oh my goodness, it was not the adjustment. Now I forgot. So never mind.
It's
That's
okay.
okay because I have several.
She's like, my turn.
I'm ready. So I really love like your 4 Ps. And like, how long did it take for you to come up with your 4 Ps and how you help women who are pregnant?
So I have to be honest, I didn't come up with those 4 Ps.
Okay.
So that when I took the prenatal certification, it's called the Webster technique.
Mhm.
That's they have 3 Ps. I added the fourth. I added the postpartum to it, but they have the 3 Ps,
Gotcha.
right? So I just adopted that from them. So I always be clear to not take credit for stuff that I didn't originate, but I did add the fourth P to it. They just have 3 Ps.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And you mentioned how like you were introduced to like prenatal care in school, but you had to continue to take certifications to learn more. Catherine and I had to do the same. So like in
Yeah.
physical therapy, we're introduced to, treating people who are pregnant, but definitely have to continue those certifications. For you, did you take those certifications like once you found out that your wife was pregnant, or were you interested in treating pregnant women before?
I was interested before, so anyone who knows me knows that I'm normally touted as a forward thinker. Like I
Mhm.
think 7 steps ahead. And so my thought process when I was in school, I learned as much as I could, anything that was taught. But I made sure I learned how to, they showed us this technique on how to help women with menstrual cramps, right? And it wasn't like in class, it was kind of like an after class if you want to stick around, right?
Mhm.
So I stayed and learned that. And then I started thinking more about the childbirth situation. I'm like, at the time I had 2 daughters. And so my thought process was, I have 2 girls. And after seeing that Business of Birth video, I'm like, I got to make sure I learn this so that they have a good experience and they can avoid that trauma and that situation. So I had already started with the childbirth part just because I'm thinking, 20 some years from now, my girls, may have babies and I want to be eligible and qualified to care for their children, right?
Yes,
And so
yes.
that's what got me thinking about that.
Okay, let's talk about the business of birth because I have heard about that documentary, but I have not watched it per
Oh
se.
man, you got to watch it.
But everything you're saying or that you said about it is like what me and Catherine talk about literally every day because
Mhm.
we see it with our moms in Operation Miss. We see it happening as soon as it happens, right? Because you said it's kind of like, you know, they say one thing like the baby's heart rate is dropping. So you already know what's going to happen next. And it's like every time it happens
Mhm.
that way. And so that's why, we created Operation Miss to monitor moms daily so that when we see something happen in their individual physiology, we can help them make those like small lifestyle modifications to help them, their data move in a more positive direction before something happens, they get into too much distress. And then, unfortunately, a lot of the times, not all the times, but when, women are in the hands of certain healthcare providers in our hospital system,
Mhm.
things just happen kind of not with them in mind. Like it's so many things happening around them. And it's like they lose control of their bodies and what's supposed to be natural, like you said. And then they end up having these traumatic experiences. And it's like, what do you, as a husband, as a dad, let's talk about that role. Like, how do you think you can help before those little timeline things kind of trickle down and they end up with an induction and an unnecessary C-section? Like, or I don't know if that has happened to you in one of your wife's 3 births, but like, what are ways that you can intervene along that journey to make sure that your significant other doesn't end up with an unnecessary
Man, that is a great question. I'm glad you asked that. There's a couple of things that you can do from a dad standpoint. One, start with taking ownership of your role.
Yeah.
You can't have authority over anything you don't have ownership over.
Mm.
Mm.
So start with, I'm going to take my role seriously as a father, and that starts before they're born,
Amen.
right? And so since this is my child, if I'm going to take ownership over something, think about your car. If you give you give a grown man a nice car, I guarantee you, he's going to look at the manual. He's going to figure out how to work all set up Bluetooth. That's the first thing we do. We want to get the stereo right? So he's going to take the time and invest the time in learning about this vehicle so that he can operate it, right?
Right.
Use that same concept because we're familiar with that. With learning about what you need to do for this child and what's normal for this child. Don't put it on the wife. So take ownership. 2, be engaged and be educated, right? So learn as much as you can about what it should look like, how it should go, and come together to have that birth plan and stand as a guardian for that birth plan. So that's the one part I didn't go over with Eliana is her name, my youngest. With Eliana, you would have thought I was probably like the biggest jerk. We walked into, my wife had she had a certain medical condition. So we had to have her delivery in the hospital. Okay. We still did it at water birth and still did it the way we wanted to. But here's what happened. I have that birth plan. I walked in on a tour of the facility and I walked in like Oprah. You get a birth plan. You get a birth plan. Okay. Charge nurse, you get one. OB, he has one. Backup OB, you got one. And just because you're here as a supervisor, you get one too. And let's go over this. And they were looking like, who in the world is this? Like you would have thought I was like Jay-Z and Beyonce walking that bad boy. But that's how I did it. And when I tell people that story, sometimes people are like, I can't believe you did that. And I'm like, why not? Who's paying for this?
That's right. That's
Right?
right.
Y'all got to remember, whether it's your insurance or whatever portion you're responsible for, you're paying for this.
Amen. That's right.
So don't go into a restaurant and be more selective about how your burger is cooked than
Honey,
you are about how
look,
your childbirth experience is.
yes,
Like you'll be picky about
yes,
a $20 meal, and yet a $10,000 experience
yes,
that you can only do once. They can remake a burger, right? This
yes.
happens one time, you get one shot. And so having that
Mm,
understanding that when I go in here, this is the birth plan. This is what we're doing. This is what we're
yes,
not doing. Okay. And so now that I know that and I'm familiar with the birth plan, when these things start happening, Jessica, oh, hey, according to our birth plan, man, we're not doing the fetal rate monitor unless it's an emergency situation. Okay.
yes,
And then they come in, hey, according to our birth plan, I don't know if you read that, but it says there'll be no stripping of the membrane. There will be
yes,
no checking of the membrane. The membrane will be the membrane until it's no longer the membrane.
yes, yes,
And so you got to know it though, because if you don't know it, then when they come in and do stuff, your wife, man, she's tired. There's a lot going on. She's not thinking, right, all the time. And then there were moments where they get weak. And so we get to have these conversations. If you
yes,
decide that you're going to do things naturally, you say, hey, we're not going to do epidural, we're not going to do Pitocin, we're not going to do any of those types of things. Then even when she's at her point where she's like, oh man, I don't like this. Let's get this, let's get that. They're ready for it. But I'm like,
oh,
hey,
yeah,
that's where you got like, baby, look at me. Look at me.
that's right, that's right,
Remember what we said.
that's right.
Okay. We know what this can lead to. I know that you're in a lot of pain. I know that this isn't comfortable. Breathe. Just stay focused with me. Right.
Yeah.
You got to be able to have that type of engagement and understanding and level of confidence in what you guys said you were going to do.
Yes,
I blocked them out. Hey, you know what? If y'all could just step out for a second,
that's right.
because right now you're interrupting our flow. And if you're not going
Yes,
to be supportive, I need you to leave.
yes,
Right.
yes,
If you're
yes,
trying to bombard us with your ideas and your thoughts and how this isn't your baby,
that's
this
right,
isn't your
amen.
experience, right? And so that's how you do it. If you want to be a dad or a husband that has that role, you got to know it so that you can spot the potential issues that could lead to this cascade and be able to stand up for it and not feel like, oh, well, that's a doctor. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Act like you in the street, and somebody
Right,
walk up and want to do something
Wherever
to
you
your wife.
comfortable with. Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, bro, this ain't the one.
right, right,
Exactly. Exactly. I love that. Me and Catherine are both emotional.
yes,
So when you're saying that, it's like, oh my gosh, we are filled with all the feels because Operation Miss is largely we communicate with the mom and like her role in all of this, but the father of this child he should be equally as involved. And when a
yes,
woman, like you said, 50%, it takes two people to make that baby, but only one has to physically deliver that baby. Just
Right.
saying.
Correct.
So the least the father could do is be aware of that birth plan and try to make sure it's implemented the way that you plan for it to be. Because when she is birthing the baby, she's so vulnerable.
Correct.
She cannot do all of these things for herself and deliver this child. And so it's just so important for mother and father to be on the same page. It's not just about showing up as a dad. You have a role.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
You're basically the number one coach,
yes,
and my job is to keep the atmosphere and keep her at peace and keep things right. Right.
right,
Because it can get chaotic. But again, this isn't a medical procedure. This isn't ER. This is not a reality show. This
yes,
is an experience. So, I went in, we had pictures of our family. We had candles that weren't real fire. I had a playlist created, that had the Jill Scott, had her songs going. Like, we're going to do this as an experience that we're creating. Right.
yes,
And that's my role. She doesn't need to be up and worried about all that. But my thing is anything negative, anything that's outside of what we said is the norm, I'm not going to wait for her to speak up and say something. I'm like, hey, we did. So that's how the baby was born, where I was able to catch her. We put everybody out.
wow,
We had them out like, hey, we'll call you when we need you. And when I called them? After she was born.
exactly,
Right?
exactly, right,
Like, thank you for letting me use this facility. We appreciate it. Y'all did great. Y'all did great. So that's how it's supposed to be, and just not being afraid. And the problem is the medical system has monopolized in a way that we forget that we have rights. We forget that we have
Yes.
choices, and we
Yes.
just blindly follow and allow things to happen, and feel like we can't say something, you know. And that's not true. You stand up, you speak up for you and your family, for your birth plan. You know, I tell men all the time, we love to be the leader. We love to say, you know, everybody loves that scripture, wives submit to your husbands, right? But I challenge men that if you're going to be the leader in everything. Be the leader in
Yes.
healthcare as well. You know, don't let your wife have to make your appointment like you're her child. You lead and take care of yourself. You know, you show up and you learn these things that you need to learn so you can take care of your family. Because you know anything can happen, and God forbid either one of you could be called home. So is your family's health and all that just going to go away because now you're inadequate in that area? You know, so
Right. Right.
That's so good. That's so good.
Yes. Now I do. Let me, Jessica, before I forget again.
Oh,
The
okay.
functional performance medicine, can you please, how does that fit into, well, first of all, explain to our listeners what that is. And
okay.
then how does that help women, or how do you see it helping women along their motherhood journey?
Great. So really quick, functional medicine is the idea, it's a practice of getting to the underlying causes of health issues, but
Mhm.
it does not use medicine. The word medicine is in it, but it's labs and it's holistic things, you know, vitamins, herbs, supplements, lifestyle changes. And so the best way I see it helping moms, you know, is preventively. So like if Catherine said that they were going to work on getting pregnant, it's the best time to do things like that. Get your gut and get all those things working well. So that way your hormones, your chemicals, your body you've made the best environment possible for that child.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you're already pregnant, there's some things we still can do on those lines. Some of it we can't because some herbs and some things are contraindicated during pregnancy. But we can
Gotcha.
clean up your systems. Look at it like that as much as possible. We need all systems to go. This is a big event. Birth is not a small thing. So
Right.
the better your body is performing, the better the experience is going to be. Just like an
Yes.
athlete, right? If an
Yes.
athlete is pain-free and their body is working at its best, they're likely to have a great performance. But you
Yes.
send somebody out there with a banged up knee, banged up liver, banged up gut, you know, it's just different. So functional medicine to me is helping prepare the mom, and then ultimately that's going to trickle to the baby. Because if mom has digestive issues, that's not going to be great for the baby. Now the baby's more likely to have issues or allergies and things of that nature just because of mom's gut or microbiome not being right. So that's the role that I look at for functional medicine.
I love that. Thank you. Because we work with moms between pregnancies. And so it's helping them figure out how can we show up our best selves to pregnancy. Because once you get pregnant, it's like you said, you're behind the eight ball, right? You don't want to be preparing for a marathon when you're in the marathon.
Right.
And pregnancy delivery is a marathon.
It is. And the good thing is with functional medicine, I can do that virtually. So I can work with people all over. They don't
Okay.
have to live near me. I don't ever have to meet them. Most of the people I do with functional medicine, I've never met in person. It's
Wow.
like this. I order their labs, send them to get their labs. We review them online. Their supplements and things are just drop shipped to their door.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
Dr.
amazing.
Godwin, I just want to say that I think you are an amazing practitioner and a great husband and father just from this one conversation. I really do.
Yeah.
Um, and I thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us and just give us that husband role and the father role, but also that like chiropractor role in this journey of motherhood. It's been so fun. But I also want you to like share with everybody that's listening, like how they can reach out to you if they want to, receive your services.
Great. So we have a website. It's TX for Texas, then the word wellness. Make sure you spell that right. And then doc, DOC. So it reads txwellnessdoc.com. That's the website, and it has contact, buttons, request appointments, things of that nature. Otherwise, if you send me an email, it's really simple. Just my name, Kenyon Godwin @gmail.com. And you can also follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I have a consulting business that's easy to follow on Instagram and Facebook called Maximize Your Purpose. So you just do @Maximize Your Purpose. And you also have all my contact information and links on there as well. We do free functional medicine consultations, 15-minute consultations, and there's a link for that as well. So if if anyone wants to contact, again, doesn't matter where you live. And here's my promise that I give to you and to your listeners. It doesn't matter where they live. If they need a chiropractor, I will, if they send me an email, I will find them the closest person that's Webster certified to them, because it's important to me that they have the right care. It's not all about me. I want to make sure that if they're in Atlanta or they're in, Wisconsin, I can find them a Webster certified chiropractor to help them in the same way that I help these other women.
Thank you so much.
Thank
You're welcome.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy you came on.
You're welcome. That was great. I enjoyed it.